The Polygamist follows Jonasi Gomora, who has spent years projecting the image of a perfect marriage, even though her husband, Jonasi Gomora, is a serial cheater. Despite Jonasi moving out of the house with his mistress, Matipa Nkosi, Joyce refuses to let go, partly because a divorce would supposedly ruin her socially given her status as an influencer, and she still wants Jonasi to come to their vow renewal. Instead of coming, Jonasi sends her divorce papers and kicks her out of J&J Holdings, the company she helped build. Once Joyce receives a call that Jonasi and Matipa are traveling the next day, she heads to his house and burns their passports and tickets, but the fire gets out of hand. Matipa started out as Magesh's girlfriend, Magesh being Jonasi's loyal older brother. She got a job at the company through him, but to grow career-wise, she needed Jonasi himself. She faked taking a file to him and seduced him. At first, Jonasi resisted, even welcoming a child with his wife. But while sitting with Joyce at the hospital, all he could think about was a note Matipa slipped him earlier that day to meet later that night. He lies to his wife, heads back to the office, and crosses the line with Matipa. A few months later, she is promoted, given her own office, and breaks up with Magesh. Eventually, Joyce found out after noticing a stain on his shirt and underwear in his bag. She tracked down Matipa and beat her up. Her husband gaslit her in return, blamed her for everything, and told her she is not the woman he married, then moved out of the house. Joyce tried to get his attention by sending their children, Mpume and Menzi, to stay with him for a weekend, but he simply got a bigger place to accommodate them. When Joyce visited him to invite him to the vow renewal ceremony earlier, Matipa overheard and convinced him to ask for a divorce instead. After setting the house on fire and slipping away, Joyce is arrested because Matipa called the police. This becomes the beginning of the end for Matipa and Jonasi's relationship. Jonasi is not happy with his wife, but the Gomoras do not air their dirty laundry in public, and he chastises Matipa for involving the police before bailing Joyce out. It also happens to be the day of the vow renewal ceremony, and even though everyone assumes Jonasi will not show up, he does. Joyce had appealed to the Prime Minister's wife for help in getting Jonasi there. Jonasi needs a tender from the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister's wife essentially tells him they are awarding it to him, because both he and Joyce present as a family-oriented package deal. Surprisingly, Jonasi drives Joyce home that day to sign the divorce papers, and he is noticeably cold and hostile toward Matipa throughout. After signing the papers, he tells Joyce he misses her, and they sleep together. He starts acting like a husband and father again, something his daughter refuses to trust even though everyone else seems to believe he is back for good this time. Joyce herself is surrounded by terrible female figures. Her mother, Mama Grace, blames her for the affair, suggesting she lost her appeal after giving birth. Her sister-in-law tells her men will be men, and that she should just be his piece regardless of the cheating, insisting that approach will keep him in the marriage for good. To prove to Joyce that he is done with Matipa, Jonasi fires her. Despite this, Joyce cannot fully trust him, and she is proven right when she gets a pregnancy scare. Though Jonasi seems happy about the possibility, she cannot stop remembering how he treated her the last time she gave birth. She had fallen asleep one night, and when Jonasi returned home from his affair to find the baby crying, he berated her for it. This memory pushes Joyce to go get her tubes tied, but at the hospital she gets the shock of her life. She initially assumes her husband found out about the procedure and came to stop her, only to realize he is actually there, because Matipa has just given birth to his children, despite having told Joyce he was on a business trip. After Matipa was fired and left the company, she moved toward the Prime Minister to spite Jonasi. Jonasi crossed paths with them at a dinner, got visibly jealous, tracked Matipa home afterward, and one thing led to another. He explains everything to an angry Joyce but lies that he told Matipa to get rid of the pregnancy, when really he was ecstatic when she told him. Joyce is devastated enough that she contemplates killing Jonasi outright, but she cannot bring herself to follow through. Instead of leaving the marriage, Joyce suggests Jonasi pay Matipa's bride price and formally make her a second wife. Joyce has no intention of leaving, and this is partly about protecting her image. Unfortunately for her, Matipa decides to ruin her plans by releasing photos of the arrangement on the same day Joyce is launching a brand campaign, forcing Joyce to publicly defend polygamy before she is ready to. What nobody quite understands about Jonasi is that he is chasing thrill above everything else. He wants women who indulge him, and being nagged at home by Joyce already wears on him. Now that Matipa has given birth to his children, she wants more from him than he is willing to give. He will not even take care of his newborns. And on the day Matipa came home from the hospital still healing, he pressured her to satisfy him sexually anyway. Constantly being nagged on every side pushes him to look elsewhere, and this time he turns to the woman everyone assumes is his sister-in-law, Essie. The truth about Essie is far more complicated than anyone realizes. Years earlier, Essie rescued Jonasi from being bullied, and the two became close friends. She would cover for him with his many girlfriends. Eventually, he started pursuing her romantically, and after she got out of an abusive relationship, she gave him a chance. Jonasi has always been a dreamer, with real talent but no money behind him, the result of growing up with an alcoholic father. He wanted to apply for a university scholarship but could not afford the application process, and Essie was the one who gave him that money. He went off to university, and slowly the calls became less frequent, until he stopped answering entirely. Years later, Essie saw a newspaper announcement that he had married Joyce. But eventually, Jonasi came back to her. He admitted that he married Joyce for her father's business connections, the kind of access he needed to take his company to the next level, but insisted Essie was the one he actually loved. He remembered things they talked about before he left, including her dream car, and bought it for her. Despite already being married to Joyce, he proposed to Essie. By that point, she already had a son, Freedom. He married her anyway, and they went on to have a daughter together, Sarah. While shopping for baby items, the two of them ran into Joyce in the same store, and Jonasi lied on the spot, telling Joyce that Essie was his brother Magesh's wife. Essie was not comfortable with the lie, but to placate her, Jonasi moved her into the dream house he had built. This became the pattern for years. He routed child support payments through Magesh to keep the cover story intact, which is why everyone, including Joyce, believed Essie was Magesh's wife rather than Jonasi's own second wife. One would assume Essie must be Jonasi's first love given how long this has gone on, but the truth is, he does not really have one. His daughter Sarah, in particular, has been neglected for years. She does not get access to the lifestyle the rest of the Gomora family enjoys, and she insists on having a coming-of-age party specifically because she already knows exactly who her father is and what he has cost her. Now that Jonasi has turned back to Essie, he is suddenly playing the dutiful father again, buying Sarah the iPhone she's been asking for months. Essie warns him plainly that Sarah is a ticking time bomb and that she will most likely reveal the full truth at her own coming-of-age party out of sheer resentment at being kept invisible for so long. Jonasi finds himself abandoned on his birthday. Nobody is willing to celebrate him, so he turns to Essie. They go out to have fun, but even that ends in a fight when Jonasi is rude to Sarah, shutting down her plans for the coming-of-age party and being generally dismissive toward her. Earlier that same day, when they celebrated Jonasi's birthday, Sarah wanted to take pictures with him. He allowed it but told her not to post anything on social media, which Freedom despised so much, he cursed his mom and Jonasi out. To spite Joyce for not celebrating him, Jonasi decides to let Matipa organize the twins' christening at his and Joyce's matrimonial home. Joyce is furious, but her anger is only going to get worse. When the family starts taking pictures, Sarah tries to join in, and her father signals her not to. To get back at Mpume, Jonasi's main daughter, Sarah decides to get sexually involved with Mpume's boyfriend. Mpume had mentioned earlier that day that she was planning to lose her virginity to him, confident that he was nothing like her father. When she catches Sarah and her boyfriend together, she is devastated. Essie scolds Sarah for her recklessness later that night, and when Essie will not let her pass on the stairs, Sarah pushes her, sending her mother falling. Jonasi is occupied at a bar at the time, berating his brother Magesh, who is exhausted from spending his entire life cleaning up Jonasi's messes. Magesh points out that he could have built a life of his own, but Jonasi dismisses him, asking what kind of life he would even have without Jonasi's help. Because the two men are tied up elsewhere, it is Joyce Sarah calls to come help her mother. At the hospital, Sarah finally breaks down and reveals everything. At this point, Joyce is not ready to leave the marriage, but she is done protecting her image. She drops out of her brand campaign and steps back from social media before the news about Sarah breaks publicly. It is genuinely sad to watch what happens next. Now that everything is out in the open, Sarah assumes this might finally be her chance to experience real fatherly love. She goes to Jonasi's office and asks him to lunch, genuinely excited, hoping he will prove her wrong about who he is. He proves her right instead, standing her up. It is heartbreaking watching her realize that, hidden or not, he was never going to be a real father to her. Even Mpume, who has received at least some fatherly attention over the years, comes to the same realization. She tries to read Jonasi a letter, expressing how deeply his actions have hurt the family, and he does not care at all. It would be reasonable to assume this is the lowest point, but Jonasi has more damage left to do. A few weeks earlier, Sarah's best friend Lindani, who also happens to be the object of Menzies' crush, convinced the Gomora children to throw a party while they believed their parents were away. The parents came home unexpectedly and shut it down, but that night was when Jonasi started seeing Lindani differently, having caught her dancing on a table. Later, he corners her in the house while she is trying to sneak alcohol during a sleepover, gives her wine, and starts flirting with her. He follows up by messaging her directly and inviting her to a private dinner, renting out an entire restaurant for a lavish multi-course meal, the kind of experience she has never had. Lindani works as a bartender at her mother's bar and comes from very little, and while she runs in the same social circles as the wealthier kids, She has never actually lived that life, which makes her an easy target for Jonasi's manipulation. Mpume eventually figures out that Lindani is talking to an older man, though Lindani never reveals who it actually is. In a particularly upsetting detail, it is Mpume herself who drives Lindani to the airport when Jonasi invites her on a trip to Durban, having no idea who she is really going to meet. Lindani goes on the trip, enjoys herself, and sleeps with Jonasi. When she returns and realizes she is pregnant, she tries to pass the child off as her boyfriend Solani's, but he sees through the lie almost immediately. When she eventually tells Jonasi the truth, he promises to take care of her, never once suggesting she terminate the pregnancy, and she believes him. Leaning further into the relationship, Lindani takes Jonasi to a strip club, which is exactly where Menzi walks in and catches them together. Menzi is devastated, made worse by the fact that his father clearly knew about his feelings for Lindani well before any of this started and went ahead anyway. Fortunately, Lindani miscarries. When she tries to call Jonasi, he is unreachable, so she calls Mpume instead, and it is actually Joyce who comes to the hospital, since she has effectively become a mother figure to the girl. The truth nearly comes out on the hospital paperwork, where the father's name would have given everything away. But Lindani fakes being in too much pain to finish the form, and Joyce does not catch it in the moment. She only realizes the truth later. Joyce was supposed to be on a trip with her kids since all of them were acting up, but they cancel it when Menzi has a panic attack after learning his crush had a miscarriage. They return home early and find Jonasi and Lindani together in the bathroom. He brought her there to recover, assuming his family would be away. Joyce is devastated and attacks both of them. As if that's not enough, Matipa arrives, having just learned she has gonorrhea, almost certainly contracted from Jonasi. At this point, Joyce is finished with the marriage, but now it is Jonasi who refuses to let go, telling her it is till death do them part. Joyce becomes so desperate that she even tries poisoning him by putting bleach in his food, but the man is a cockroach and survives. Joyce is forced to bribe the doctor, who lies to Jonasi that he suffered a heart attack. When he comes home this time to find most of the women in his life finally pulling away, something in him snaps, and he begins abusing the women who reject him. He freezes Matipa's account so she cannot find work, and she eventually leaves her children with Joyce and flees the family entirely. All of this finally pushes Magesh to stop protecting his brother. He helps Joyce get Jonasi out of the house, and Jonasi retaliates by firing him, though Magesh feels nothing but relief. Jonasi moves into the house he originally bought for Matipa, now with Lindani. A few years later, he learns he has contracted HIV, and his health deteriorates quickly. Lindani becomes his unintended karma. Since she is a young woman with no interest in caring for a dying man, she starts treating him with open contempt as his condition worsens. Joyce, meanwhile, moves on with her life and publishes a memoir. But Lindani decides the book launch is the best place for her to come dump Jonasi for his family. The way the ending plays out almost pissed me off. Joyce takes him in, and Jonasi, now too sick to run the company, begs Magesh to come back, who in turn convinces Menzi and Sarah to step in and help manage things. Despite everything Jonasi has done, there is still a woman trying to look after him in his final days, and even Essie, who by all logic should have moved on long ago, continues showing up to help, and even steals his corpse to try and bury him. But the real twist comes through the reveal of how Jonasi actually contracted HIV. Back when Joyce was arrested for setting fire to his house, she was briefly held in a cell with a woman named Lungi, who contracted HIV from her own boyfriend and ended up in jail after a confrontation with him and his side piece. Joyce remembered her, tracked her down later, and paid her to visit Jonasi, fully aware of how he would react to an attractive woman showing interest. He slept with her exactly as she expected and contracted the virus. The reason everyone suddenly seems so attentive to a dying Jonasi is that Joyce coached Menzi to talk his father into signing over the bulk of his assets before he died, which Jonasi, weakened and desperate for connection, actually did. The day before Jonasi died, Joyce finally told him the full truth about Lungi, about all of it, and the shock of that confession is most likely what triggered his death the following day. She told him that his children would never turn out like him, and for the most part that holds. Mpume and Menzi are genuinely decent people, despite everything they witnessed growing up. The one exception is Menzi, whose heartbreak over Lindani's betrayal seems to have hardened something in him. He doesn't respect women anymore, and is sleeping around carelessly, including with his old crush again, right at the funeral. Are they setting up Menzi to become just like his father? I don't think he can be that bad. He's empathetic and responsible, especially when it comes to his siblings, so I don't think those qualities would simply disappear. And honestly, what were they expecting from a man named Gomora,